After a Game 3 loss at Kauffman Stadium, it's do or die now for the Royals. Let's dive into that in this edition of Locked On Royals.
You are Locked On Royals, your daily Kansas City Royals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are tuning into Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. As always, I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. That's at JOHNYJ_15. You also can catch us on wherever you get your podcasts. That can be Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, Google Podcast. We're on Odyssey and YouTube. Just be sure to hit that follow button and subscribe. If you're a first-time listener and you want to know a little bit more about me and this show, I am based here in Kansas City. I work at Sports Radio 810 WHB. I'm doing some hosting, some co-hosting, and a little bit of producing as well. But when it comes to this podcast, when you click on this link, you know that you're going to be getting 30 straight minutes of Royals baseball. Today's show is brought to you by Booking.com. The right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your rivals. Book today on Booking.com, the official accommodation partner of Major League Baseball. Go to the Booking.com app today. Well, I had just returned home from Kauffman Stadium. I was out there for Game 3 of the ALDS, and I'll have plenty to talk about in terms of the atmosphere out there, what the game was like as a whole. But, you know, it's somber feelings coming back from Kauffman Stadium tonight. But I wouldn't say the same sort of depression or somberness that follows you after a usual loss. And I understand that playoff losses are going to sting a little bit more. We all know that. It doesn't matter if you're the Cinderella team or you're the heavy favorite, a loss is going to sting. And more to that is a loss is going to sting worse at home because the visitors come into your house, they silence your crowd, and they walk out with a win and now put you on the ropes. We all knew that going into this game, it was going to be, the punch to put somebody on the ropes, right? If you're a boxing fan and you know how loud the crowd gets when somebody's on the ropes, they're covering their faces. Tonight was the game that was the punch to put somebody on the ropes. Doesn't mean you're out, doesn't mean you're KO'd, but it puts you in a difficult spot. It puts you in a dire spot, and that's where the Royals are now. I also think, as frustrated as you may be, you got to put things into perspective. It's what I've tried to do all season long. And I never wanted to patronize this fan base. I never wanted to talk down to this fan base, and that's not what I'm trying to do now. But I think in nights like this, you have to acknowledge where this team is, who they are playing, and what they've accomplished so far. You know, as I said, it was somber and depressing leaving Kauffman Stadium just because you didn't get to experience the joy of a playoff win there, their first one in 9 years. But I didn't leave feeling totally defeated because what we've seen in these first 3 games has been, I think a very impressive feat. I think that these first 3 games have shown just how close the Royals are to a lot of these heavy hitters in the American League. I mean, it would be nice and glorious to be up 2-1. It would have been great if the Royals took both games in New York, but you also have to factor in they're playing the number 1 team in the American League, and that team is up for a reason. They've got a more stable roster. They've got more heavy hitters in their lineup. But yet the Royals in all 3 games have gone toe-to-toe. I've used this analogy so far in this episode about a boxing match, right? They're going up against a Mike Tyson-like boxer, and yet they're not really scared. They're not backing down. We'll get into the walks and being competitive in certain counts and certain spots of the game because you could absolutely make a case of, well, they are scared of facing certain hitters because they're not attacking them. I get that part of it too, but more so about this team's fire and competitiveness. They've done one hell of a job in the postseason, right? They took 2 games in Baltimore. I don't think many people thought they could win that series. They got it done. I don't think many people thought they would be able to hang with the New York Yankees. They still have a chance. Like, they're not KO'd just yet, but now they are officially in a spot where there is no, well, you can lose this game. It's your cushion game. It's your buffer game. No, it's do or die now. And I don't know. I think that gives you a little bit of a boost, more juice going into Thursday. I could be wrong, right? I absolutely could be wrong. And the Yankees come out with their fangs out tomorrow and they bludgeon the Royals. Certainly possible. It's baseball. Even tonight, the Dodgers coming out, being down 2-1, had their fangs out and just jumped all over the Padres. It happens, right? The Guardians had their fangs out in game 1 of the ALDS against Detroit. They won 7-0. Then they lose 3-0 and 3-0 back-to-back games, right? So they've struggled in that department. But for the Royals, it's been a different story, a different path for them. They are living this underdog dream, and they are going up against the iconic brand in Major League Baseball. Everybody knows that. You go to different countries out there, you'll see a lot of Yankees hats. And, the Royals are a team that understood going into this series that the Yankees are the Yankees for a reason. They've got a large fan base. It's New York. They've got Aaron Judge, the MVP winner. They've got Juan Soto. They've got Garrett Cole. They've got stars. They acknowledge that, but that didn't really force them to back down. They weren't scared of Yankee Stadium. And even in a loss tonight, I don't think it was one where they were scared. I think we saw that in the end, the Yankees have a better bullpen. And the Royals bullpen has fought well in these first, 5 games of the postseason. They've done much better than I think a lot of people out there thought they could do. But this Yankees bullpen hasn't allowed a run in this series. They've been nails, and they were nails tonight. They took the crowd out of it. And there were great moments for the Royals in this game to do some damage, to break things open, to really, put Kauffman Stadium into a frenzy, but they failed to do so. And that's baseball. That's the postseason. I've had a lot of people be upset about Bobby Witt Jr. and his struggles, Vinny Pasquantino and his struggles, some guys not coming through. But you also have to acknowledge the fact that in the postseason, it's hard to score. It's hard to score when you're facing the best of the best. I mean, the Yankees have not had an excellent offensive series, right? They scored 6 runs in game 1. They scored 1 in game 2, and they scored 3 tonight. It's not like they're putting up 7-8 runs every single time. If they were, they would have run the Royals out of the building in 3 games. It would have been no contest. It would have been an absolute beatdown. But still, this team has a pulse. There is a heartbeat. They have a chance tomorrow to force a very scary Game 5 for the New York Yankees back in New York. Not saying the Royals would have all the momentum if they won tomorrow, but at that point, it really becomes do or die. We're talking about do or die right now with the Royals because if they lose tomorrow, it's done. The season is over. But I think more so than you could if they got swept in Baltimore, you can really take a positive look and digest it. If the Royals season ends tomorrow, I'm not trying to have the loser's mentality here, but they can digest everything tomorrow if it all comes to an end and be proud of what they did. I'll get that out of the way because I know there's people that are upset and they want me to vent. They want me to rant about certain guys not coming through, managerial moves, Chris Bubich, all this and that. But I do think after winning a playoff series, playing the way they have against the Yankees in this series, there will come a time tomorrow, if it is the end, if it is over, where you can stomach it and say, this has been one hell of a year. It's not to take this loser's mentality of it's over. As I just said, they got a heartbeat. They got a pulse. They can turn things on its head. Tomorrow, if they win that game, Garrett Cole's on the bump for the Yankees. Michael Wacha's going for the Royals. If the Royals win, it allows you to go back to Cole Reagans for Game 5. So that's the heartbeat you still have. But I also think just leaving the stadium tonight, I didn't really walk out feeling disgusted about the loss. It's hard to find a lot of positives in a loss because what is it at the end of the day? It's a loss. And I've never been somebody that wants to parade around losing baseball games because it's a business about winning. It's about winning in October. And when you don't get that done, you didn't do your job. You have people that are going to be upset that you didn't do your job. But when you get in so invested And this is what I think I've kind of gathered from the followers, listeners, comments I've gotten after the game. When you have gotten so invested into this team, it's the same way back in 2014. And I remember this, that after they won the wild card game, I told myself that it doesn't matter what happens from here on out. They've already gotten us a playoff win. They're playing with house money. But then when they were playing the Angels and they were playing Baltimore, you had this outlook of, well, now they're this far. They might as well keep going. It was the greediness in me of, well, now they made it to the World Series. Now they can win this whole thing, and I'm going to be devastated if they don't. And they lost in Game 7 of the World Series with the tying run at third base. I don't need to reopen those old wounds there. But in this season, going from 106 losses to the American League Divisional Series against the Yankees, playing the Yankees close, bringing a playoff game back to Kauffman Stadium, all those things are good. It's undeniable. All those things are good, and they are positive. But I see the side from the fan of, well, they won a playoff series, and they grabbed one in New York. I'm going to be pretty pissed off if they don't win a single game at Kauffman Stadium. You'll feel that way. And again, it's if it happens. If they win tomorrow, they got a chance to win that series and go on to the ALCS with a win on Saturday in Yankee Stadium. Again, it's not over. It's not done. But tonight, I think it was this moment for me because I'm not going to the game tomorrow. I don't know if they get to the ALCS, what my ability to get to the game looks like, what tickets are going to look like. I spent money going to the game tonight, and that was a hefty price. But to me, I took it as if that's the last time I see the Royals at Kauffman Stadium, I'm just not going to be so beaten up and gutted about it. You can nitpick certain things, right? That's obvious. In sports, you can nitpick things. You can be frustrated. And that's what we do after every loss. How many times this year did we look at a loss and say, what can you do? That happened. No, there's always going to be something you point to. But in this game, I'll be honest, I don't think the Royals gave it away. That is probably my lasting thought I had about Game 3 against the Yankees. I don't think they gave it away. They were down 2-0. They tied the game up. Yeah, they had an opportunity. It was with 2 outs. They had an opportunity in the 8th. They couldn't come through. Stanton had the home run. That's what he does. He hit 27 this year. And Chris Bubich didn't make an awful pitch. Stanton just had a good swing. And I think it's different if you had a 4-3 lead and then they go ahead 5-4. You gave that one away. Tonight, it was a battle of the bullpens, and the Yankees won it. The Yankees won that outcome. I thought it was kind of comparable to Game 1. Like Game 1, the Royals had a lead. That's something they didn't have tonight, but it was a one-run lead on the road. You don't feel gutted about Game 1, and I just don't feel gutted about Game 3. That's just where I'm at right now. Curious your guys' thoughts. I know there will be angry people in the comments saying I'm wrong. I get that. Everybody's frustrated. Tensions the feelings are going to be, not as positive as they were the other day after a win. There's going to be some tension. I understand that. It's playoff baseball. The Royals have made it this far, and I'm not going to try to sugarcoat a loss. A loss is a loss, and there's no moral victories there. But I just don't think the Royals gave it away tonight. I think that they played a really good team, and that team got the best of them. And now they have a chance to, even up this series tomorrow and force a Game 5 in New York, which would be great for this series and great for all of Major League Baseball. Okay, we'll take our first break of the show. When we come back, I'm going to talk about that atmosphere at Kauffman Stadium because it was wild tonight. It wasn't as good as it could have been, but still, I do want to give some thoughts on that. That's coming up on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. Want to give a shout out to our first sponsor in FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. And I led you astray once again, so maybe don't take my betting advice. I'm just trying to go off of what I think could happen. Had Bobby Witt Jr. having more than one hit. He did get on base twice, but it was a walk and a hit. I had Cole Reagans on the over for a strikeout total for Game 1. It was a push. It was right at 5, which was, I think it was set at, or no, it was 5.5. So I was wrong. It was the under on that instead of the over. So going into tomorrow, I think I'm going to say that Salvador Perez has the over on total bases in the game. That'll be my pick over at FanDuel for game 4 of the ALDS. Also want to give a shout out to Gametime. If you're thinking about going tomorrow, I would strongly suggest you buy your tickets over at Gametime. That's what I did when buying my tickets for tonight's game, game 3 in the American League Divisional Series. It was great. Didn't have to wait long to get my tickets. They were right there. I added them to my Apple Wallet, and it was notifying me all the way leading up to Wednesday of when prices were going up, when they were dropping, the best possible deals, the best spots, the hottest deals. They got all that covered over at Gametime. It's what I've used all season long when buying tickets to Royals games. But it's not just for baseball games. You can do football games, basketball games. You can do concerts, comedy shows, all that stuff. Gametime is going to have you covered. So here's what you need to do. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off on your first purchase. Those terms apply. So again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It is game time. Well, one of the things that always is tough to bring up after a loss is what the crowd was like, because you leave the stadium not feeling great, right? You want to, disregard what happened when things got loud, the pregame festivities, all of that. But that was something that I chose not to do. Michael Massey's triple in the 5th inning was one of the loudest moments, in my opinion, that Kauffman Stadium has had. And call me, a prisoner of the moment. Say it's recency bias. That place was erupting. I mean, the stadium could have collapsed when Juan Soto dove and missed it, and the Royals had tied the game. And Michael Massey has the emotion. The towels are waving. It was loud, man. And I know that TBS did not have great quality for the sound. It didn't do it justice. It was so loud at the game. And from first pitch on, fans were standing, waving the towels. They were getting into it pitch by pitch. The booing of Jazz Chisholm, that was all in good fun. I mean, it was an elite playoff atmosphere. And it's great because, I think the national fan base got to see once again that Kansas Cityans support baseball. They love the Royals, and they're going to show up when this team has a good product on the field. And I think it added an extra element, a little extra fire that the Yankees were the team they were playing. But still, everybody was living and dying pitch by pitch. You've heard me say that 200 times over the last week. Living and dying pitch by pitch. That's what's great about playoff baseball. In my opinion, it's unmatched. And from a baseball fan in me, you have that intensity. You have the crowd getting into it. And the Yankees did a hell of a job silencing the crowd late in the game. But there's the emotion, the raw emotion. There was a flyover. The national anthem was phenomenal as well. Patrick Mahomes was shown on the Jumbotron or Crown Vision, and crowd went wild. Eric Hosmer was shown, who had the first pitch, by the way, through a perfect strike. He was there holding his kid, and he put on the ring, the World Series ring, and flashed it to the camera. Crowd went wild again. It was just well done. Everything about it was well done. And what I will say about this, because this has happened before, and I think even this year that wasn't a playoff crowd, there were some times where the Royals had big crowds at Kauffman Stadium, and they laid an egg, right? There was nothing to cheer about. They lost 3-0. They lost 4-1, and that one run was a fielder's choice. Boring stuff like that. Tonight, there were big moments in that game that the crowd had every right to just be unhinged about. Kyle Isbell's double to get their first run of the game. 2 outs, 2 strikes, goes the other way. Crowd came to life. And then that Massey hit. I think that in spots like that, even if you drop one in, it's a single, crowd's going to explode, right? You tie the game, you're going to get that reaction. But the fact it was a triple and Juan Soto dives and misses it and it rolls all the way to the wall, it allowed the crowd to explode and then continue to get louder and louder and louder as he's rounding the bases. It was such a cool moment. That's something that I will cherish about this game, even in a loss. The tailgating was great. Even the feeling leaving the park, it wasn't a Debbie Downer feeling about it. I know I've said that over and over again, and I'm not trying to disregard people that are really upset about this game, but I just don't think Royals fans are beaten up about this series. They know this team can still come from behind. They've given them a heck of a ride so far, and tonight, yes, they lost, and losing is not going to be tolerated. Matt Quatrero would tell you losing is not going to be tolerated, but there is something to competing in a playoff game. The Royals go out there tonight and they lose 8-0. You would have me sounding off a little bit, going, well, you waited, 9 years for a playoff game, and this is what you showcase. This is what you do. Not a single moment could the crowd get into it. The Yankees took everybody out of it by the third inning. I mean, that would have been something to hang your head about. But it took until the eighth inning for the tie to be broken after it was 2-2. And the Royals are going to a lot of bullpen arms. Brady Singer comes in to face Aaron Judge. I mean, that's the beauty of playoff baseball. You never know what you're going to get. And, this team is capable of pulling off a come-from-behind win. They are a team that is, for the most part, relentless. And tonight, they just didn't put together, good enough at bats late. They couldn't get that one big hit after Michael Massey had the RBI triple. After that, it was pretty silent in the sixth inning and the seventh inning, and then they had some noise in the eighth inning, but couldn't cash in. In the ninth inning, they went down without a whimper. But still, the atmosphere, if you're going out tomorrow and you didn't get a chance to be there tonight, it's fun, man. It makes you really take it in because playoff baseball, in my opinion, is just, it's the best. It's the absolute best. I mean, the concourse area was packed. Pre-game festivities were great. In-game festivities were great. It was a close game. It came down to the final inning. If you were just speaking purely about baseball and saying, was that an entertaining game? I think it was. I think that was manager versus manager, bullpen versus bullpen. No, some of the best players in the Royals lineup didn't come through, but even some of the best guys for the Yankees didn't come through. It was really Giancarlo Stanton that did all the damage in that game. But the atmosphere from start to finish was great. If you're watching on TV, I heard the TBS broadcast was not good at really relaying how loud it was there, capturing the atmosphere, because it was great. If you were there as well, I'd love to hear it in the comments because I had a blast out there. And I am fortunate, at least, that with spending that type of money, the game was close for all 9 innings. Even if it doesn't result in the win, I can live with that. If it was 7-0 after 2 innings, I think I'd be hurting a little bit more. My wallet would be hurting a little bit more in paying those playoff tickets. But there's still one more to go. If you're thinking about going tomorrow or you're already going, enjoy it, man, because you don't know when the next home playoff game will be. And I think that you got to cherish it, take it all in, take however many people you can, because it is truly an extraordinary experience. Okay, we'll take our final break of the show. When we come back, now for the negative side of things. The walks have killed the Royals. Why is it happening? And is it going to happen tomorrow in Game 4 between the Royals and the Yankees? We'll dive into that next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. Want to give a shout out to our final sponsor and our title sponsor in Booking.com. Booking.yeah. The right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your rivals. Book today on Booking.com, the official accommodation partner of Major League Baseball. So go get the Booking.com app today with hotels, bed and breakfasts, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more on Booking.com. You might just find your perfect stay even in your rival's city during the postseason. With Booking.com's wide variety of choice across the U.S., you can go incognito to all of your rivals' cities. The right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your rivals. Again, Booking.com, Booking.yeah, and go get started with the Booking.com app today. It is no secret that the Royals have struggled to throw strikes in this series. It was a problem in Game 1, a game in which the Royals lost, and it was a problem again tonight in Game 3, in which the Royals lost 3-2. What I can say before I get into the negative side of it, the Royals are fortunate that with all these walks, The Yankees have yet to cash in on one of those innings in which walks have been a serious problem. Tonight, Seth Lugo walking the bases loaded and then only giving up one run. That was huge. In game one, kind of a similar situation. They gave up the lead, but 2 runs could have been 5 or 6. And that's what has surprised me about this Yankees lineup. They have not had the knockout blow in one of these games yet. And when the Royals have better command, which they just haven't in these 3 games, it has put them in some pretty terrible situations, as early as the 4th or 5th inning. And that just can't happen when you're trying to save some of your best bullpen arms for later in the game. You don't want to have to go to John Schreiber or Serpa in the 4th or the 5th. You want to save those guys a little bit later on, maybe the 6th, 7th, or the 8th inning. But right now, the Royals starters and some of the Royals bullpen arms just aren't throwing strikes. But I do think that there is a big reason as to why they haven't been as sharp with their command. The Yankees have done a great job at spitting on a lot of 2-strike pitches. That is something that Baltimore was gifting them in the wild card series. They were freely swinging. They were free swingers in Baltimore. They were pretty much hacking at anything. I mean, the perfect example is Colton Cowser swinging at a 2-strike pitch that hit him on the wrist, broke his wrist, in fact. But the Yankees, I mean, it doesn't matter if it's Juan Soto or it's Oswaldo Cabrera. They can work the count, and they're just not going to swing at anything that is maybe an inch or 2 off. Is the zone a little bit tight? Sure. But the Yankees know the zone very well. And the Royals have always been known as a free swinging team, which is why in some of these spots in the series, the Yankees have worked their way out of some late inning situations because the Royals are going to try to ambush somebody. They may not get the best swing on the ball. The Yankees, they're going to work the count. They're going to get to a full count. They're going to load the bases. But what has been different, and I have been shocked by, is that in some of those bases loaded situations with some great hitters up, they're just not aggressive. They would much rather see a hittable pitch go by if it meant they could see a couple more pitches. And maybe that was the recipe going in, but they're also a team that can draw a lot of walks. They just have guys that do that at an elite rate, and the Royals just don't have many guys that can do it at an elite rate. I don't know if that's going to change for tomorrow. I mean, even Michael Wacha didn't have the sharpest command, but it's hard when you're not a strikeout pitcher. Same thing goes for Seth Lugo. If you're not really just painting the black and you are using every corner of the zone, it could be a long night for you because they're just not going to swing at that pitch that's an inch or 2 below the zone. It's not something they're going to do. And when they do sometimes, Stanton showed you, he can park the ball over the bullpen in left field. So, this team, I think, has to more so rely on the offense to help them because I think you have this different confidence in attacking the zone if you got a lead. If it's tied or it's a 1-run game, you're not just going to be feeding the ball down the middle to Aaron Judge and Juan Soto. They got to be careful. That's what Seth Lugo was doing tonight. He knew that he couldn't groove anything to Aaron Judge or Juan Soto or Giancarlo Stanton, but even a few times he did, and it cost him. But then you get to the bottom of the order, and that's what I can't live with. I can't live with walking Oswaldo Cabrera. I can't live with walking Anthony Volpe. I can't live with walking Alex Verdugo. I can't live even with walking guys like Austin Wells. He's the cleanup hitter for the Yankees, but the only players I can stomach seeing them get to first base on a walk, Juan Soto, Aaron Judge, Giancarlo Stanton. Everybody else has to see strikes in certain spots, and falling behind in the count has brutally hurt the Royals in this series. I mean, Chris Bubich didn't make a terrible pitch to Giancarlo Stanton, but what was the count? It was 3-1. So Stanton knew that he could get something hittable here. Now, maybe Chris Bubich should have put that pitch even a few more inches below the zone and walked him because Stanton was really the only one that did damage tonight off of Royals pitching. Everybody else was looking for a walk up there, and they did draw a lot of walks, and they've drawn a lot of walks in this series, and it's simply unacceptable. That's something the Royals cannot do if they expect to win tomorrow. If you're walking 8, 9, 10 guys again, I mean, kiss your season goodbye at that point. So Michael Walk has to come out tonight, or tomorrow night, excuse me, although it is getting close to midnight, attack the zone. This offense has to give him some run support. 2 runs ain't going to do it. I know it's kind of been the theme of this postseason, in their 3 wins so far in October. They've only scored, what would it be? 6 runs? Is that right? They got 1 in game 1 and 2 in game 2 in Baltimore. So there's 3, 7. So 7 total runs in their wins. That's just not good enough. It's not. I mean, if you can get the output that you had in game 1, maybe you can win that game with 5. Maybe you can win it with 4 like you did in game 2. But the walks, they got to stop. They have to stop, or this team's not going to have a chance to force game 5. Now, it's not just to groove something, because they got hitters that can do a lot of damage. But the walks are unacceptable. Bobby Witt Jr. not hitting well, unacceptable at this point in the season. Vinny Pasquantino, I know he's coming back from the thumb injury, and I wasn't expecting a ton from him. But still, you got to give more than what you're given. And I think that's the easiest thing to say about this offense. They need the stars to get going. And if they can't tomorrow, this series ends in 4. This series is over in 4 games. And that's just where I'm at with this. All right, that's going to do it for another edition of Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. I've been your host, Jack Johnson. Thank you for making Locked On Royals your first listen today. For your second, find Locked On MLB. Baseball Guru Soli brings a daily blend of humor and baseball, keeping you updated on every aspect of the playoff picture. Find Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. Tomorrow, I'm going to have a pre- and post-game for the Royals on 810, my day job, of course. So you can catch me over there if you are so eager for Royals talk before and after the game. And then after that post-game, I'm going to be coming back here and doing another podcast. So if you're waiting just for this, it's going to be a little bit later on in the evening after the game. So I'll probably have all my thoughts then, depending if the Royals win or lose. That'll judge the mood I'm going to be in. Because I'm going to be disappointed and depressed if tomorrow is the last time I get to talk about a live Royals game until spring training, or a game that counts until April or late March of next year. So the outcome of tomorrow's game will dictate a lot of my mood, as I'm sure it will for everybody listening, wherever you may be listening. But until then, you take it easy, Kansas City.